90% of Americans plan to ignore the number one piece of Social Security advice. That's the headline. And I want you to sit with that for a second, because when most people read that, they think, wow, 90% of Americans are blowing it. But what if I told you for a lot of these people, they're not blowing it at all? What if the advice itself is the problem? Today, we're going to break down what this advice actually is, who it works for, who it doesn't, and most importantly, how to figure out which side of the 90% you should be on. Because the thing here is, this is not a one size fits all answer. And anyone who tells you that it is not giving you advice. They're giving you a headline. My name's Emlyn, and over the last couple of years, I've worked with hundreds of retirees. So, what's the advice that 90% of Americans are skipping? It's simple. Wait until 70 to collect your Social Security with the highest monthly benefit. And look, on paper, that sounds like a no-brainer. Let me show you why people say it. Let's paint the picture with real numbers. Say your full retirement age, the amount you get when you get your full retirement is claimed at your normal retirement age. This is $2,000 a month. If you claim at 62, the earliest you can claim, you are taking a penalty. You walk away with about $1,400 a month. That's it. But if you wait, every year you delay past your full retirement age, your benefit grows by 8% guaranteed. Not based on the market, not based on anything you have to manage, but built right into Social Security. So by the time you hit 70, that same benefit has grown to roughly $2,480 a month. You're going from $1,400 a month to $2,480 a month. That is a 77% increase, guaranteed adjusted income for life. So I completely understand when the experts say, wait, the math is real, the increase is powerful. But here's where it gets complicated. And this is the part that most headlines skip right over. Every time someone says, just wait until 70, there's a hidden assumption baked into that advice. The assumption is that you can afford to wait. Either you're still working and bringing in income, or you've got a solid portfolio that can carry you from the time you retire until you turn 70. Or you've got a pension or some other income stream that can bridge that gap. But here's what the data actually shows. Most Americans retire in their early 60s, and most Americans don't have a massive portfolio sitting waiting to be tapped. For a lot of people, Social Security isn't a part of their retirement plan. Social Security is their retirement plan. It replaces 50 to 60 and sometimes up to 70% of their income. So when someone's in that situation and they hear just wait until 70, it's not really advice they can act on. It's advice that assumes a reality they don't even live in. And that's not a behavioral problem. That's a constraint. Those are two very different things. Now, there are absolutely people for whom waiting till 70 makes a lot of sense. And let me be clear about that. If you are in excellent health and your family has a history of living into their 80s or 90s, waiting is worth serious consideration. The math works in your favor. You live longer. You're protecting yourself against one of the biggest risks in retirement, which is outliving your money. If you've got a solid portfolio, enough to cover your living expenses from the time you retire until you turn 70, you can use that portfolio to bridge the gap. What you're really doing is converting part of your savings into a guaranteed income. And that's not a bad trade at all. And if you're married and you're the higher earner in the household, listen to this closely, because your Social Security benefit doesn't just affect you. Whatever you lock in eventually becomes the survivor benefit for your spouse when you're gone. I had couples come in and where the husband had just assumed they both claim early. We ran the numbers and realized that if he claimed at 70 instead of doing it at 62, his wife would receive hundreds of dollars more per month for the rest of her life after he passed. That changed everything. So yes, For the right person in the right situation, delaying is a powerful strategy. No question about it. But let's talk about the other side because this is where most people actually are. Let's just be honest. If you need the income, waiting really isn't an option. And forcing yourself to wait can actually make things worse. Here's a real example, and I want you to follow these numbers closely because this is where things get very eye opening. Say you retire at 62. You've got $350,000 saved up, and you need $40,000 a year to cover your expenses. This is a pretty common scenario. Now, someone tells you wait until you're 70. So you do. For 8 years, every single dollar of that 40,000 is coming out of your portfolio. 11 to 12% withdrawal rate. Let me put that into context. Most financial planners consider a 4% rate a safe withdrawal rate. 11%, that's not aggressive. That's dangerous. And here's the part that really gets people. The beginning of retirement is the worst possible time to be pulling out large amounts of your portfolio. If the market drops in those first few years and you're still taking big withdrawals, you lock in those losses. Your portfolio doesn't have a chance to recover. And by the time you hit 70 and that bigger Social Security check kicks in, you might be looking at a portfolio that has dropped from $350,000 to somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. Now flip it. Same person, same situation, but they claim Social Security at 62. Let's say their benefit is $1,500 a month. That's $18,000 coming in. Now, instead of pulling $40,000 from their portfolio, they only need to pull $22,000. That drops their withdrawal rate from 11% down to 6%. Still elevated, but manageable. Their portfolio has room to grow, and they've bought themselves time. Yes, they gave up the bigger check later, but they protected their portfolio today. And in a lot of situations, that's the smarter move. You can't optimize a strategy that you can't afford to implement. And that's just being real. So there's one more thing that doesn't show up in a spreadsheet, and that's peace of mind. The stress of watching your savings drain to nothing over 8 years while you wait for a bigger check. For some people, that cost is real and it matters. So here's what I want you to walk away with today. Stop asking, should I wait until 70? That is the wrong question. Start asking, what problem am I actually trying to solve? Because the answer to that question changes everything. If your goal is to maximize your lifetime income, delaying helps. If your goal is to protect against living a long time, delaying helps. If your goal is to maximize what your spouse receives, delaying helps. But if your goal is to cover your expenses now and protect a modest portfolio and reduce financial stress, the answer looks very different. I had a retired client, a school administrator, 63 years old, single, decent savings, but nothing excessive. She came in almost apologizing for thinking about claiming early, like she was doing something wrong. We sat down and went through her full picture, her health, her portfolio, her monthly needs, her family picture. And when we ran all together, claiming at 63 was the right call for her. It kept her portfolio intact, it covered her income gap, and it actually let her enjoy her retirement without consistent anxiety of watching her savings disappear. That's not giving up. That's a good plan. And that's what I want for you. Not the answer that sounds the smartest in a headline, the answer that actually works for your life. Look, the reason 90% of Americans aren't waiting until 70 isn't because they're making a mistake. It's because for most people, waiting until 70 isn't realistic. And for a good number of them, it isn't even the right move. Social Security is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make in your entire retirement. And it doesn't happen in a vacuum. It connects to your Medicare strategy, your tax situation, and your withdrawal plan. All of it. This is exactly what we do inside of the Retirement GPS framework. We gather your full financial picture, we build a plan around your actual numbers and goals, and we simplify it so you know exactly what to do and when to do it. If you're between 55 and 65 and you're starting to think through Social Security, when to claim, how it fits in your plan, what's actually right for your situation, let's talk about it. The link is in the description. No pressure, no sales pitch, just a real conversation about your retirement. And if this video helps you see this differently, do me a favor and hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me where you are in your Social Security decision. I read every single comment. My name's Emlyn, and I'll see you in the next video.